November 14th.
Second.
Motion seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. At this point, I'm going to move into tonight's Hear the Public. This would be the point in time where any public comment in the audience, if you want to give public comment on anything other than what's currently on to tonight's agenda, please step to the mic and state your name and your address. Seeing none, I'm going to close Hear the Public. Move into tonight's public hearing. There's two items. The first item is file number KCU-23-06, a request from Volga Rentals LLC for a conditional use permit to allow the construction of 4 multi-family residential units as part of a mixed-use development located at 63 and 65 Village Loop. The second is file number KPP 23-11, a request from Spartan Holdings LLC for Eagle Valley Ranch Phases 4 through 6, which is a major preliminary plat on approximately 39.8 acres of land containing a total of 138 lots, as well as parks, roads, and open space. PJ.
All right, thank you. Peter Galenko, also known as Volga Rentals LLC, has applied for a conditional use permit to allow the construction of 4 multifamily residential units as part of a mixed-use development located at 63 and 65 Village Loop. The building's anticipated to be 2 stories tall with approximately 4,000 square feet of office space on the main floor and the 4 dwelling units on the second floor. The conditional use permit's required for the multifamily units due to its location in RA2 residential apartment/office zone. Under the zoning ordinance, 3 or more units in the same building or on the same lot are considered to be multifamily dwellings. In terms of the location, it's just off the intersection of Whitefish Stage and West Evergreen. You've got Edgerton School just to the north, and then you've got Village Greens just down to the east. As far as utilities, there's water and sewer in the area. Water is Evergreen water, not City of Kalispell. Sewer lines, there's a main that comes around the back end of this property, and that's fed also with the force main that comes up from Village Greens. This is a shot of the property. As I mentioned, zoned RA2. And the growth policy designates the property as urban residential. Rezoning the property isn't necessary for this project. The growth policy also encourages a variety of residential development that provides housing for all sectors and income levels within the community. This is showing the overall layout. You've got the building towards the front of the lot. You've got the parking lot coming in, accessing off of Village Loop. There's 19 parking spaces required, and 19 are provided with this layout. There would need to be a couple tweaks to the design. One is allowing for access to the garbage enclosure if it's going to be collected by the City of Kalispell. Right now that's shown in that location, and that will need to be adjusted. Also, they need to have access to the sewer main, which runs through the back end of the property, approximately in that location. They would need to have a clear access to that without any of the parking spaces. So again, just a minor tweak to that. It would need to provide an additional easement for existing city infrastructure with that force main that comes up. No recreational amenities are required because there are only 4 units, and recreational amenities are only required with 5 or more. Also, because of the size, there's no traffic impact study that would be required as part of this project. The majority of the project site's relatively flat with no significant impediments, although the most significant development issue is the site's location on a steep bluff towards the rear of the property, which starts right around in that location through there. The bluff area generally runs north-south and has a history of sloughing and instability both to the north and south of the site. The plans provide for placing the building away from the slope near the street, sitting approximately 40 feet away from the slope crest. The applicant submitted a geotechnical report, which included a slope stability analysis from Alpine Geotechnical. The report states that based on the information obtained from the subsurface investigation, the site can be properly developed for the proposed project with implementation of the recommendations contained in the report. In relation to the slope stability, in particular, the report concluded that the proposed development will have no major impact on stability of the existing slope relative to the current design building setback under static conditions. The report did include several recommendations relating to design and construction activities that should be followed, and additionally, the building department would review the building plans and geotech report prior to issuing a building permit. Lastly, stormwater would be managed and constructed per the City of Kalispell standards for design and construction. Stormwater must be managed on site, and since the geotech report did not directly address stormwater, the design would need to incorporate recommendations from a geotechnical firm if infiltration is used in order to not negatively affect slope stability on the bluff. And this is shots of the preliminary elevations. We didn't receive any written public comment on this project, and with that, staff would recommend that the Kalispell City Planning Board and Zoning Commission adopt staff report KCU 2306 as findings of fact, and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the conditional use permit for the 4 multifamily dwelling units be approved subject to the 9 listed conditions, and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
No. So this is basically just a conditional use permit because it's a multifamily, right? So
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's for the 4 units on top.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open this up for public comment.
Hi there. My name's Tyler Tondrum. I'm with Tricola Engineering, and I'm here on behalf of the owner. So we've reviewed essentially the staff report that was sent out, and we don't really have any questions or any comments on the conditions of approval, but I'm here for any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Good evening. My name's Ron Jarvis. I'm the owner of the property to the north and west of the proposed development. When I did my project in 2019, the city of Kalispell required a large stormwater retention pond before issuing a building permit, resulting in the loss of about 5 parking spaces from what I had planned. Also, the city did not allow my building to route runoff to the storm trench just to the northwest of the parking lot, as you see on the plan there. My building is only 3,000 square feet. The proposed project is for 4,000 square feet with a larger parking lot, yet there's significantly less provision for stormwater runoff. And as a neighbor on the slope, and we all depend on stability of the slope, this concerns me. The city, that's point number 1. Point number 2, the city of Kalispell requirement for 1.5 parking spots per residential unit in a multifamily might work in a larger multifamily development because the averages work out. If the residents of each of these 4 units combined have more than 6 automobiles, where will they park? There's no parking on the on-street parking on Village Loop. So I'm concerned about what happens to the neighbors when there's overflow parking that won't fit in this parking lot, which right now is the bare minimum of what City of Kalispell requires for the combined commercial and residential. Number 3, the character of the Village Plaza, Village Loop area is business professional. Adding multifamily changes the character of this area. And finally, just point number 4, if the City Planning Board approves this conditional use permit, a precedent will be established. And so any adverse effect from this particular development on the area will be compounded by future developments that will do the same thing because we've set the precedent to allow this one. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to discuss.
What building did you say was yours?
Great Northern Dental Care, 85 Village Loop.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Any further public comment? Okay, I'm gonna close public comment, look to the board for a motion. You got it?
I move that the Kalispell City Planning Board and Zoning Commission adopt staff report KCU 23-06 as findings of fact and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the conditional unit use permit for the 4 multifamily dwelling units be approved subject to the listed conditions.
I second.
Motion seconded. Any discussion, maybe from public comment, or?
Yeah, it's just addressing some of the public comment. The stormwater issues will be addressed with the city. Like, that was one of the conditions, that no stormwater has been submitted, but we need to see that through the geotech, so that won't go through unless we get that it shows adequate stormwater. Let's see, the parking, there is not a lot we can do about the parking. That's the code, and that is how that works. And I understand where you're coming from, but yeah, I can't really address that. Anyone have anything to say about the parking?
I've actually got some questions for PJ. The historical precedent for not allowing one person that is, what, seemingly 600 yards away from entering into that stormwater drain. What was the reasoning for that? Do you know? Do you remember by any
Now,
chance?
Keith may be able to answer directly on that, but, you know, what I would say is that, you know, when you're looking at, say, like what a precedent is, you're not necessarily looking at exactly what a storm water layout was or what the geotech was on even on an adjoining parcel. You know, there's city standards for design and construction about the storm water, a lot of different things about the site development, parking, and so forth that go in there. And so you're looking at each project on its own merits and how it meshes up with what the regulations are for that design. So in terms of stormwater, yeah, I mean, the geotech would come into that. There'd be an engineered design on that system. You know, if there was a difference between the two, you know, Keith might be able to answer that. This isn't the final design necessarily. You know, they still need to come through site review, get their building permit, and when they have a final engineered storm drainage, this may wind up being a lot different than what they're showing here right now. If they can't fit that stormwater on there and their parking numbers on there, they may need to reduce the size of the building, you know.
So they're still going to be holding to the same rules.
It'd be, yeah, the same rules would apply to both of them, you know, but you can't necessarily just say this is exactly what happened 2 lots down, so this is exactly what needs to happen here without getting more in depth.
And just for the public's information, the difference between the commercial and the residential, there's 18 spots, is that right?
There's 19 spots that are in there, yeah. So if you're talking about the parking.
Yeah, in terms of 19 spots, you got 4.
So you arrive at that, so retail and office both are 1 per 300, so it's based on the gross square footage in the building. And that's where you're looking, taking 4,000 square feet, divide it by 300, and that's what your parking count is there. With residential, it's based on the number of units. So studio is 1 per unit, multifamily is 1.5. Actually, under state law, you can almost make an argument that it should only be 1. Now, in commercial areas, you can't require more than 1 parking space for multifamily. So in some senses, this is more than what that would be. This is more of a hybrid area, so I wouldn't necessarily directly apply that here. And then kind of going into one of the other comments that were made too, as far as the zoning, it's zoned RA2, and the area on the north side of Village Loop is a different zoning category than the B1. So that main area is a neighborhood business component. The RA2, which was what this has been zoned as for quite a while, is a residential apartment office. So it kind of encourages that mixed use that you're seeing with what they're doing here, whether that's on the same site or, you know, various properties that would develop differently.
And this mixed use has been done in the city before with some success?
You can see, and I think it's probably more of an increasing trend, not just in Kalispell, but all over, is having that mixed use component, especially in the housing situations that we have now.
Well, and we also approved that apartment complex.
Heroes Crossing.
Yeah.
No,
I know the one you're talking about.
by the Hutton Ranch.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
In Hutton
absolutely.
Ranch. It hasn't been
Yeah.
built yet, but
No.
it was right next to,
Yeah.
was that the Homewood Suites?
Yep.
Is that a good example of?
That's one example out there where you see that mixed use right next to the theaters and so forth. But I think some of the things, the Silos project going up over there right now, it's just the residential component, but they'd have a restaurant and some boutique shops potentially
Right.
that are mixed in.
So it's
with that
general
too.
mixed use is what it is. I mean, it's,
And this is not a new thing then?
As far as the zoning, no,
Not
this
setting
is allowed,
precedents.
it's not general office that's allowed, or general business that's allowed. On this side of the street, it's only office and residential. So what's allowed, what they're proposing has been what's allowed on that property for 10, 15 years, or ever since it's been annexed.
Okay.
And then I also just wanted to point out, like, this is a conditional use permit because it's multifamily, so we're switching from 3 to 4, so that's why we're doing that. But these people could equally as well build 2 different buildings with 2 apartments above, right?
It gets mixed in.
And do the same
gener-
thing effectively without doing this? I mean, not as one building though, but it's 2 lots, so they could have 2 different buildings that were commercial with apartments above.
They
but
could,
not
yeah.
do anything.
If they could fit that in there. It's, in that situation, they probably still need the CUP because we're looking at the number of units that are on the lot.
Okay.
And so 3 or more for us is considered multifamily. So if they were doing they could just do just a duplex
Right.
on the property and that would be okay, or they could do just an office. It's more
But
about
isn't
getting
this
the
is 2
design.
properties that they're proposing mixing?
There's 2 properties, but in order to do this, they're gonna need to aggregate them into one.
Oh,
So
it's
right
not
now, it's a
appropriate
lot,
for- got it.
they're like sublots. Right now, there's a lot 1A and a 1B. So
Okay,
viewing it as a single unit is kind of what you need to do.
okay.
once SB 382 comes into effect, does this come in front of us?
No. So site-specific reviews, public reviews would not be done under 382. So, yeah,
So this would have been, in the future, something like this will be done administratively.
correct.
Okay. I just want to point that out as much as I possibly can,
does
it's
that
big
take effect
changes
then?
going on here, so.
So 382 took
years?
effect.
2012.
It took effect in May.
Oh, wait, what year is it?
It took effect in May, but what it is there's a 3-year timeline. So we're going through a process of establishing the planning commission, a public participation plan. Then we do the land use plan and update our regs, but all that's supposed to be done over the next 2.5 years.
That's when it has to be done. I imagine we're
Right.
probably further ahead of the curve than maybe other cities are in getting that done, just,
Hopefully,
From
everybody's
what we've
trying
done
to
in the
figure
past,
out
so.
that timeframe, so.
okay. Any other discussion, questions? I think it's a good use of infill for what the development was built for.
Yeah.
And, that it's sat pretty quiet in there for a while
Long time.
on that subdivision, so. And, it's going towards the housing need in the city as well, so. Can I get a roll call?
Joshua Borgart,
Yes.
Kevin Orrick,
Yes.
Pip Burke, Chad Graham.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. This will be in front of the council.
January 2nd, so which I believe is a Tuesday because January 1st is
Okay.
holiday.
Okay, so this will be in front of the council on January 2nd, so we'll also be taking public comment at that as well. If you want to show up to that as well. Thank you. Moving into the second one.
Okay, Spartan Holdings LLC has submitted a request for preliminary plat approval for Eagle Valley Ranch Phases 4 through 6, which is a major preliminary plat on approximately 39.8 acres of land, containing a total of 138 lots, 130 of which are single-family, 7 are apartments/office, and there's 1 potential commercial lot, as well as parks, roads, and open space. It's part of the Eagle Valley Ranch Planned Unit Development, which overall is an approximately 107-acre mixed-use development approved in 2018 and then expanded in 2020. And that expansion was around the Home Fitters building right in this area through here. The And I guess I should mention too that those original approvals included provisions for single-family, multifamily, as well as office and commercial uses in the property. The Phase 4 through 6 properties generally located on the east side of Highway 93 North, to the north of Eagle Valley Ranch Phases 1 through 3, which are down in this area through here, to the west of Ponderosa Estates, and approximately 225 feet to the south of Ponderosa Lane. Utilities, in general, there's utilities that have been extended up through phases 1 through 3. There's also utilities that are available within the highway frontage. Water, in regards to water supply, there's adequate capacity within the city's water system to serve the subdivision, particularly with the new water tank being constructed on property adjoining the subdivision, right in that area right there. As far as sewer, the new sewer infrastructure will include a lift station in the southeast corner of the subdivision, which will need to be placed on a separate utility lot dedicated to the city. And the sewer plans may also include an analysis of downstream lift stations with any necessary upgrades to be completed by the developer. And there's also adequate capacity within the city's sewer system to service the subdivision. It's a shot of the property looking to the north. The zoning is R3 and RA2, along with the PUD overlay over the entire property. The growth policy shows it as suburban residential and urban mixed use. The growth policy encourages a variety of residential development that provides housing for all sectors and income levels within the community. This is the conceptual layout from 2018. Phases 1 through 3 are down in this area through here, which have been final platted, and at least in the single family area, largely developed. In the blue is a mixed use called out with the potential office use as well as multifamily. This area was primarily planned for the apartment site with single family running up to the north. Again, this area was added to the PUD with the existing home fitters commercial lot, and would also be looking at a mix of office and multifamily through that area that was added in 2022. This is showing the overall layout. You can see it's fairly similar to that. We're with phases 1 through 3 to the south, single family running up into this area, with the multifamily and offices kind of in the south and southwestern portion of the property. The zoning ordinance does require buffer areas along designated entrance corridors to the city. At this location, a 100-foot buffer is required. In the buffer area, there are a limited number of uses which may occur, and is generally anticipated to be a landscaped area, which would include trails and utilities. When there is an existing structure, such as the Montana Home Fitters building in the southwestern corner, the buffer can be reduced to accommodate the existing structure, and the 25-foot buffer is appropriate for that lot through that stretch. However, Common Area 10, adjacent to Lot 164, should be widened to meet the 100-foot buffer requirement. The 100-foot buffer is provided with Park Area 1 along the northwestern boundary of the subdivision. The specific design of each of the buffer areas would be subject to review and approval by the Parks Department. As for geology, the overall site's generally flat without any major topographical or geographical features, geological features limiting development. The applicant submitted a supplemental geotechnical report from Slopeside Engineering from 2019 that was based on a 2006 preliminary report by CMG Engineering. The pre-application review required a stamped letter from an engineer stating that the prior geotech reports are still accurate or provide updated information if applicable. A stamped letter or update has not yet been submitted. The 2006 report stated that the site soils are suitable for development, and the 2009 supplement did not specify any conditions which rendered the site undevelopable. However, both reports make several recommendations related to the construction of infrastructure and buildings which should be followed during the development of the property. A condition of approval should require the stamped letter be submitted for review and approval by the city, and if there is any change in the geotech analysis, that any necessary remediation shall be required at the city's discretion, which could include the possibility of redesigning and resubmitting the preliminary plat for a new review. Groundwater was observed as part of the investigation, and per the 2019 supplement, it's estimated that groundwater depth would typically range from 5 to 15 feet below the ground surface. in the low-lying areas of the project. The environmental assessment prepared by Jacola from October of this year states that through observations and area knowledge of the site, the groundwater table during peak seasons estimated to be approximately 4.5 to 9 feet below native ground in the low-lying areas. The subdivision regulations call out areas with seasonal high water tables of less than 5 feet to the surface as land unsuitable for subdivision unless the hazards are eliminated or mitigated by approved design and construction plans. The applicant in this case has proposed 2 mitigation measures. First, the single-family and commercial buildings would not have basements unless a site-specific geotech report's prepared for that specific lot with any recommended mitigation to be completed. Second, the finished floor elevation of each structure will be set such that the difference between the finished floor elevation and peak groundwater level will be a minimum of 5 feet. Both these mitigation measures should be conditions of approval and reflected on the face of the plat. In regard to drainage, stormwater runoff for the site shall be managed and constructed per the standards for design and construction and the stormwater management program with final design to be approved by the Kalispell Public Works Department prior to development. As for highway noise, under the subdivision regulations, where a subdivision in an R or an RA zone abuts a major arterial, such as Highway 93, noise mitigation must be incorporated to reduce the noise impacts to 60 decibels at the lot line. The applicant did submit a sound study, and the slide shows the existing condition, which shows that 60 decibel line coming through the western set of lots adjacent to the highway. The study calls for the installation of an 8-foot tall berm or alternatively a 2-foot berm with a 6-foot sound wall along the western boundaries of the lot closest to the highway. However, the report does not address the RA zone lots on either side of Jefferson Boulevard, which are lots 162 to 165. The existing commercial building on the south side of Jefferson would not require noise mitigation because noise mitigation requirements are intended to protect residential areas. Commercial development itself is considered one of the available mitigation techniques and can be incorporated into a mitigation plan. It's not known at this time what the specific uses on the other lots would be, and any non-residential use would not require mitigation, but any residential use, which would include multifamily, would. In order to address the noise mitigation requirement, any residential use in those lots would require a supplemental sound study and appropriate mitigation as part of the site review and building permit process, and a note should be placed on the plat to that effect. The design of the noise mitigation measures would be reviewed and approved by the city prior to construction. Subdivision regulations require a minimum of 0.03 acres of parkland per dwelling unit, which in this case would be 3.9 acres for the area subject to this plat. Or the equivalent value in land with improvements. Parkland for single-family lots is required at the time of final plat. The multifamily development would require 500 square feet per unit or the equivalent in amenities. The multifamily components determined through site review at the time a building permit is issued. The applicant did submit a conceptual park plan which shows walking paths around the perimeter, also has 2 playground areas that are called out and a picnic and rest area that are shown on there. Access for the subdivision would be provided by 2 connections to Highway 93 North, as well as an extension of Jefferson Boulevard from the south, which would connect to Rose Crossing and the traffic light at the highway, as well as Whitefish Stage to the east. The plans also provide for a future connection to Ponderosa Lane to the north at that location. The connection was a condition of the PUD approval that required the provision of a future connection if desired by the Ponderosa Estates Homeowners Association, and they did indicate their preference for a connection point at that location. The connection is intended to allow Ponderosa to receive services or to access services and Rose Crossing without going through the intersection of Ponderosa Lane and the highway. The new connection to the highway with Jefferson Boulevard would be subject to MDT review and approval. The developer would need to obtain an approach permit from MDT for the approach onto the highway. They would also review the highway frontage and determine if any upgrades to the frontage are required, and any improvements would be installed by the developer. Internal to the subdivision and pursuant to the transportation plan, Jefferson Boulevard running through there and down would be constructed as a collector street, and the remaining streets as local roads under standards for design and construction. Both would include full street profiles, which would include but not be limited to curb gutter, landscape boulevard with trees, street lights, and a sidewalk. Lots fronting Jefferson Boulevard should have shared accesses unless they're able to meet access spacing guidelines. A traffic impact study conducted by David E. Wooster and Associates from October of 2023 was submitted by the applicant. Under city standards, the developer would need to maintain or improve the existing level of service for the affected roadways rather than simply maintaining an acceptable level of service. The TIS concluded that there were decreases in service at several intersections and that mitigations required to accommodate this development. The TIS is currently under review by the Department of Transportation as well as Public Works and has not yet been accepted. Prior to final plat, all mitigation required as part of the approved TIS would need to be completed, and all those improvements would be reviewed and approved by Public Works, MDT, or both as appropriate. To summarize the mitigation that was called out, Rose Crossing and Jefferson Boulevard at that location, they did identify some delays in the traffic, and no specific mitigation recommendation was included, but looked at the further study being necessary. The other intersection was Highway 93 and Rose Crossing at that location, called out modifying lanes to a dedicated left turn, a shared left through lane in the center, and a dedicated right, as well as some modified signal timing. Thirdly, Highway 93 and Eagle Valley Drive, no improvements were called out. And lastly, Highway 93 in Jefferson, which would be a new connection, was calling out a 3/4 turn. As an aside, that 3/4 turn would be subject to MDT review and approval as well. Phasing, you can see in the green is phase 4, with phase 5 and phase 6 as you're working towards the north. We did receive one written comment that was provided to the board prior to the meeting. With that, staff would recommend that the Kalispell City Planning Board and Zoning Commission adopt staff report KPP 2311 as findings of fact and recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the preliminary plat for Eagle Valley Ranch phases 4 through 6 be approved subject to 41 listed conditions, and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, so that lot 164 is commercial. Can that be multifamily?
It could be multifamily, yes.
Okay, and so if it was multifamily, they would need to do the noise mitigation there. If not, then the noise is fine.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions? PJ, can you go through the notification process again, what we do?
With public notice. So there's a couple things that we do. One is it goes out in the newspaper, at least 15 days prior to. Information's available on our website for that. As far as individual notice going to property owners, generally what state law calls out is 150 feet around the project. We tend to go 225 with what we do as a matter of practice, just try to bring in everything that would be there. But there's a specified buffer around a project area where public notice is provided through mail.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to, another question I want to ask, because we hear these, questions in public comment and everything. So, if an individual is watching, to have that answered so they know what our process is for that. And, it does follow state law as well. So, as far as, I guess, as far as the traffic up north, I guess it's my understanding that, triggers need to be met before road improvements happen in any area. I mean, it has to be warranted to have that upgrade like they did with Rose Crossing with that intersection. I imagine that they finally got to where a trigger was met trip-wise, that
right, and there's a couple things depending upon what you're talking about. As far as the city review on a project, when we have a traffic impact study that comes in, we're looking at whether or not there's a drop in level of service at an intersection, and they need to maintain or improve that. And as with city process, we look at that as part of the final plat when it's coming in, so it's kind of anticipatory in what's going to be generated. Part of what I think you might be getting at is with improvements on the highway are a little bit different because it's MDT.
Yes.
And so if you're putting in a traffic signal, for example, they're not going to base that on what projected traffic trips are. They're going to base that on what actual trips are.
Right.
And so you can see a delay in some of those highway improvements that come in, but eventually, they can hit that point, and that's why the Rose Crossing traffic signal went in, is because those warrants were met.
Well, and it's one of the things that, I've explained to some people because of their concerns about the traffic up there and why we don't go and, just require a developer to go before they even start to go and put a traffic light in or something like that. And, the explanation is you could have a developer want to come in and just pay to put one in, and they literally couldn't do it. The state would not let them go and do that, right?
Correct.
It has to be warranted, kind of like the discussions we've gone through and had with stop signs in the city. It has to be warranted. We can't just go and put a four-way stop out there. So I guess kind of my point to that is, unfortunately, the way things are set up on how traffic goes, it has to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
Type of a thing. You have to meet these triggers for it to go through and actuate and create these fixes for the area. So that's why I asked that.
Right.
So
I have a question about the groundwater situation and the note about the 5-foot difference required from the peak groundwater. Who establishes what that peak groundwater is? Like, is that something?
They'll need to show that when they're getting their building permits on that. So
On the whole subdivision or the individual?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
for the whole, okay,
Yeah.
so we're just looking for more information about that.
yeah, I mean, they clearly identified that there's high groundwater in there, which
Right.
under our regs, they have to have mitigation in place for, and that was what was included in their EA that came in, were those two. And we've done that, not with the elevation difference between the finished floor, but certainly with basements, we've done that in some other subdivisions when there's been high water. And they wanted to keep the flexibility in there. To potentially, there's some areas where you don't have the high groundwater and you might have some slopes that you want to have daylight basements or something. And that's why they included the provision in there for having a site-specific geotech. So somebody wouldn't have to do a site-specific geotech necessarily if they're not doing a basement and can clearly meet that 5-foot offset.
Okay.
There was a paragraph written in the letter that was sent to us, and the paragraph is trying to suggest that they and themselves alone within the Ponderosa community are having to support this particular project as individuals. Is that in any way, shape, or form possible, or is it just the fact that, building is happening and that's just
Which
how they
paragraph
feel
were
that
you
they're
referring to
supporting
in
the
that?
situation?
We've
On
got-
the letter, there's
Yeah.
just a comment about them having to support. Is this a financial thing, do you think, or is this just an errant comment?
Just a minute. I'm just going to read it real quick just to see. But-
Second paragraph.
oh,
They said they have to support this multifamily. I'm just curious, is it like, do they have to get more
They don't have to
taxes?
support
They don't have to
that,
pay more
so-
water tax?
No, so
Okay, cool.
they're not supporting anyway, so it's not, public
trying to
notice isn't
stab it.
about, it's not a neighborhood vote, for example. It's an
Cool.
opportunity to comment on something.
Okay.
And bring those comments forward. But
sure.
yeah, there's nothing in terms of financial support or any
Perfect.
type of actual vote or anything along those lines.
So just an errant comment.
Right.
Cool.
any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna open this up for public comment.
That would be you.
All right. It's up to you.
My name is Mike Bessick. I'm work with Chicola. I'm representing the owner for this project, and I'm just kind of here to answer any questions. But like I said, I think you guys handled it pretty well. So
Thank you.
Is there anybody online? No. Forgot to ask earlier. Okay, no more public comment. I'm going to look to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion that the city, Kalispell City Planning Board and Zoning Commission adopt staff report KPP-23-11 as findings and fact. I recommend to the Kalispell City Council that the preliminary plat for Eagle Valley Ranch phases 4 through 6 be approved, subject to the conditions listed below.
Second.
Okay, motion is seconded. Any discussion?
Nope.
I think I kind of had some of my discussion during questions, so.
I mean, we're looking at the plat, it looks
It's the same thing.
appropriate, so,
it's-
yeah. And
It's,
they've got a lot of work to be done, you know, there's a lot of conditions on there, but yeah, it all seems doable, so.
and goes a long way, again, you know, towards more housing in Kalispell. So I applaud that. Roll call.
Joshua Borgart,
Yes.
Pip Burke,
Aye.
Kevin Orick,
Aye.
Chad Graham.
Aye. Okay, gonna close tonight's public hearing, and that will also be January
January
2nd?
2nd.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing tonight and move into old business.
Okay, so old business, last month we had 3 projects in front of me. There was a conditional use permit for lofts at Buffalo Hill, which was 40 independent living units up there with Emmanuel Lutheran. That was approved by council. We had a PUD for Stillwater Bend Phase 2, which was approved on first reading on a 6-2 vote, as also approved the plat for that on that same vote. And the main issue was the proximity to the river in that situation. And then there was also the annexation of Dusty Acres, which is up on Highway 93 North, not far from Eagle Valley Ranch here. And that was approximately 50 acres and was approved as well.
Okay, new business.
So new business, next month, we don't have any agenda items per se as far as projects coming through. So a little bit of breather on that. However, there is some stuff still going on.
Wow.
One of the things, just for your guys' knowledge, on the 18th, so the next council meeting, we've talked before about Senate Bill 382 and getting under that. And one of the steps we need to take is form the Planning Commission. And so on Monday, what council would be doing, presumably, would be to designate the planning board to be the planning commission. And I think in the past we had talked about maybe needing to dissolve and reformulate, but actually the state statute allows the council to just appoint this board in its current makeup, terms and everything, to be the planning commission. And so that would become effective, and at your next meeting, you would no longer be the planning board, you would be the planning commission, which is substantially similar, but it would fold in some of the Board of Adjustment duties if there was a variance request or an appeal. But the big thing in terms of 382 is that kind of sets the stage to start doing your land use plan once we have the public participation plan, which is one of the other things that we're going to be bringing up next month as part of a work session. And so, you know, we had the work session last month where we talked about what we wanted to see in the public participation plan. So we'll be putting something and have a draft for you next month that we could then hopefully forward on to City Council. And the other thing that we would be doing actually during the business portion is updating the bylaws, since we'd be going and becoming the Planning Commission. It'd be, some of it would just be updating it to being the commission, but you know, we've never changed to the 6 o'clock time from the 7 o'clock time, so it still says 7 o'clock unless otherwise directed. And there's a few little updates like that in there that it's an opportune time just to clean up. So that would be our agenda next month, would be the bylaws and the public participation plan as a work session.
Nice.
Sorry.
Polynesians.
Anything from the board? All right, we're adjourned.
Merry Christmas, you have a birthday.